Okay, today we're working on this Toro lawnmower that the customer says they smelled gas. The gas was actually leaking out of the bottom of the carburetor when I got it. I thought there was still gas in the tank, but I just checked it today and it's empty, so it all leaked out. It is time for an air filter for sure. So let's get this carburetor off of here. This is I use a 5/16, but 8mm is the same thing. So we're going to take the carburetor off and see if we can figure out why the gas was running through here. Luckily the oil's not over full, so I don't suspect that it was really going into the cylinder. I think it was more just leaking out of the carburetor. So this is the back part of the air filter housing. Now we're going to take off this clamp for the hose off the gas tank here. And we can pop this hose off the bottom of the tank. Like I said, the gas tank's already empty, so that's why I'm taking it off here instead of putting a clamp on it and taking it off the carburetor. Although it doesn't want to come off of here. Well, I guess I got to move the carburetor a little bit. There we go. A little bit right there. Now this, like I said, this is all plastic, so you don't want to overdo it when you're prying on any of this. So right there, a little piece of brass is your main jet. So luckily plastic doesn't corrode. So that helps it deal with the ethanol in the gas. I see a little bit of dirt in here, a little bit of contamination, a little bit of brown bubbles in there. But where the problem would likely be is in the needle valve right here. Now, something you want to watch for when you pull this carburetor off like I did is this part here that goes on the intake. There's an O-ring that fits in there. That's why there's no bolts or no gasket where this goes onto the engine. You got this little O-ring that fits in here. Right all the way down in there. And then on the little intake tube, you have this retainer that needs to pop inside there. We're going to clean this a little bit. We don't want to put this in there dirty. You could do this later, but I'm choosing to do it now. I'm pretty sure that fits in this groove right here. And it's not really flexible. There we go. Now the O-ring's not going to fall out on us. So now, over here is where we get to the needle valve. So we're going to slide this pin out of here. Needle nose pliers make it easier. And then we pull this out. There's the needle valve. This all looks nice and clean. Of course, the dirt wouldn't be stuck to that. It would be laying down in there. And all that down in there looks good. But I am going to try and get that seat out of there. Because if that little seat goes bad down in that hole, in that tube, it's not going to seal right. It feels pretty hard. That actually looks like brass. Okay, yeah. I was a little incorrect there. It's been a while since I took one of these apart. It doesn't happen too often anymore. But I need to really worry about this. So this has a rubber tip on the end of it, which means it's not going to have a little piece of rubber sealing material down in there. And I don't see anything wrong with this. So for now, we're going to actually reassemble this. And I'm going to put some gas in this and check it out. See if it is actually overflowing yet, or if that was possibly a freak accident. Kind of like right there where I dropped the seat, the needle valve. There it is. Let's clean this off again. And try this again. So I'm going to hold it so it's facing down like that. That way it won't slide out. And we put that down in there. And we let that sit like that. Line that up. And we slide this pin back in here. Ever so carefully. Of course, it's not going to go right in. That would be too easy. It does look like the other side's open further. I'm going to try and slide it in the other side once. I'm thinking that this side that I tried first might be the one to hold it tight. Well, either way, it worked better that way. Well, let's see here. All right, now that's back in there. And I can tell that it's actually the needle and seat that are stopping the float. If this would become warped or bent, that this was stopping on the body, then that would cause the needle valve not to seal. And I know what you're thinking. Yeah, I forgot to check to see if there's anything in the float. The float felt pretty light to me, like it wasn't leaking. And I don't see anything in there. On this one, I'm pretty sure I'd be able to see some kind of liquid in there. So I'm going to reassemble this and put some gas in it and let it sit and see what happens. There's a little contamination down in there. That might cause it to stumble a little bit while you're cutting grass, but nothing major on this one. So now, since I didn't pay attention to which way this was, this part here is offset to one side, and down in the bottom of the bowl, you have this here. So I'm going to put the bowl on so that this part here, the part that's the lowest of the bowl, is over top of that. That way, it should clear. But I'm pretty sure if you put it the other way, it's not going to go down all the way. And this is where you want to make sure it goes on all the way, that you don't use the screws to pull it together, because you could break off the tabs. Alright, so it's definitely on the right way, otherwise it wouldn't go together this far. And now it's down pretty much all the way on both sides. It's even all the way around. So now we can put these two screws back in. So we're going to reassemble this, put it back on. And let it sit for a while and see what it looks like with some gas in it. Then I'll try and start it. And I need to look at the rest of the mower. It's self-propelled, so I'm going to need to look at the belt. The owner wants all that stuff checked out. They want it ready to go when they get it back. So now to hook this linkage back up. I think we're going to do the throttle one first, which goes into that hole there. And of course, when you're reassembling this, you don't want to put too much pressure on this plastic. It will not like that. So I'm going to use pliers and hold this lever over farther because it's spring loaded in. But if you can actually pull it out. There we go. It popped in just like that. It looks so easy when somebody else does it, right? Now, get this back together. So we're going to put the hose back on here while we have it loose. And now, we got to put it on the tube for the intake, which I know you can't see it. I can't see it either. It's dark in there. Because I don't have the lighting. I should have to be doing this. I gotta turn it a little bit. It's the hose for the gas line that's making it difficult. So once you get this back on this side here, the carburetor fits into this slot. So when it's cold, that spring-loaded choke lever closes the choke like this. And so does that spring. That spring holds it. Actually, it's not the choke arm that holds it closed, even though it does when it's cold. But this little spring here actually helps hold it closed. When the engine warms up, the choke is going to push it open like that. I believe it's that style. Yeah. Yeah, some of these use a vane that when the motor's running, it pushes on, the air pushes against the vane. But I believe this one has a little spring over there that gets hot right over top of the exhaust. I can see it in there from this angle. Now we put the air cleaner housing back on. We want to make sure that we get this breather hose reattached. So we're going to use some needle nose pliers to reach back in there and pop that on. There's no clip or anything to hold that on. It just fits up on that little tube that sticks out. Now the two black ones go on the outside, the two shiny ones go on the inside. The two shiny ones hold this to the carburetor. And that's actually the only mounting for the carburetor. On the back of the carburetor, on a usual, what used to be a normal engine, carburetor was bolted fast to the engine. Now the carburetor is bolted fast to this air cleaner housing with these two screws, and then the two screws that go out here hold the air cleaner housing to the engine. So we put that hose clamp on. So right now there's nothing leaking here. So I'm going to have to let this sit a while, and we'll come back later and see if I find anything. All right, we're back here with this Toro lawnmower again with the possible gas leak. I let it sit overnight. I looked down in here this morning, and there's gas laying in there, so it definitely has a problem. Most likely the needle valve. Yesterday, this here is actually the vent, not so much the gas cap on this model, but it vents right here, the gas tank. So I put a piece of wire in there and I blew some air through it. It's open, so that's not going to cause a problem once the warmer weather comes, which was a possibility last year when they had this problem, but it definitely didn't build up pressure in there from yesterday, but it's leaking. So for this, I'm going to take the cover off here to make it easier to see. So there's two screws in there. On this model, they're Torx head screws, so I used the T20 driver. And then down here is another, it clips onto the cover underneath. There may be an easy way to do it, but I poked a little hole there because there's a hole underneath that label, and you just push on the little piece under there and it comes right out. This guy right here. So now we get the cover out of the way so we can see better. And we do what we did yesterday, take all these screws back out, which are these two guys here, the 8mm ones. And the two 7mm down here. I like using a clamp like this to clamp the fuel line so the gas doesn't run out. Now that we have gas in the tank today. Yesterday was easy, the gas tank was empty. Get the clamp off of here. And let's see if this fuel line will pop off. Well, it's coming off, but there we go. Now we slide this back off of here. Just like that. Now we can see the linkage a little bit better. So we tilt it that way, the choke comes off. Tilt it this way, the throttle plate comes off. For the throttle linkage. So I'm going to go with the problem is inside there. The needle valve maybe needs to be replaced. So I'm going to have to go online, check on the price, possibly just replace the whole carburetor instead of guessing. Maybe I'll take it apart and make sure that the float is actually empty now that it has more fresh gas in it. And we'll see what happens. So I got the carburetor all apart. I had the float out. I looked through it with a flashlight. On this one, I had it in my hand when I did it. I put it back together to test it. But with just being white plastic, you put a light to it like this, you can see right through that. And there was nothing in there. It was empty, and it felt like it was empty. So I put it back together. It's upside down. So the weight of the float is pushing against the needle valve. I figured I'd try this and see if I see it leaking. I lifted it a few times. There's some gas in there. The level's not coming up. But what leaked in here overnight, it took all night. And definitely can't give it back to the customer like that. And I called my local mower shop to see what he recommends for a carburetor. Prices range from about $15 with a filter to $60 or so, depending on who the supplier is. So this is going to have to wait till I get another carburetor, because with this being plastic, it's possible that it's a little warped from heat and it could be leaking past the seat. I looked at the tip on the needle valve. It didn't have any wear. So, instead of playing with it and replacing one part at a time for the cost, just replace the whole carburetor once and done, and then you should be safe. Otherwise, you got to wait days and make sure it's not leaking, and eventually the grass is going to start growing and it's going to have to get out of here. But I still have to look at the belt and sharpen the blade and change the oil yet, which that's all going to wait till the carburetor's back together. I decided that it was time for a new carburetor. It was leaking, and it's just easier to change the whole thing. Well, I got a Briggs & Stratton branded carburetor from a local mower shop that I deal with, A&W Mower Repair. I'll try to put a link to them in the description. So it's same carburetor, but we do have to change this piece of linkage right here. That should just pop right off of there and pop onto the new one. This already has the O-ring in there. So now this is all set to go on. So first we'll do the choke lever. Like that. Oh, it needs to go on top. Sometimes these go right together. Sometimes they put up a fight. There we go. I'll put the fuel line on here. Well, actually, I'm going to replace that fuel line first, since I do have some of that handy. I'm going to replace that. Well, we'll get the carburetor up here in place. I believe this may pop right off of here. Well, no. First you got to get that cover out of the way. Time for some power tools here. That was easy. Now we can slide the gas tank out of here. So a good reason to get this kind of hose is that it's made for gas and it stays pliable even when cold. So it's good for snow blowers. Because sometimes if you go to the hardware store and get fuel line, it gets really hard when it's cold outside. Then you can't work with it. Like say you need to work on your snowblower. Nobody does that in the summertime. So you got to take the carburetor off. The fuel line's going to fight you if you don't have the right kind of fuel line. Now, the trouble with this, it's a smaller fuel line, so I may need to change the clamps. The internal size is correct, but it's a thinner wall hose. Alright, that clamp is a little bit loose on there, so I'm going to have to resize this clamp. We squeeze it a little bit that way. Squeeze it a little bit that way. And now it's going to fit much better. Is it gonna fit? Just right. Just like you want it. New air filter. This is from the gas I spilled. And the cover. That's the hole that this little prong fits in. That's the reason I put the hole in the label there. Now we'll get this blade off of here. This one is a 5/8 socket. Makes it easy like that. And we'll look at this belt, which I looked at a little bit yesterday. And I think the belt's all right. I think it's got a couple seasons left on it yet. So we're going to leave the belt alone. And we're going to sharpen this blade. I use an angle grinder, an electric angle grinder. So I'm going to do that real quick and we'll be back. Okay, so we got the blade sharpened here. Got our torque wrench ready. So after you sharpen the blade, since you're removing material, you really should check the balance. Make sure that it stays level, pretty close to that. If one side was to dip down really far, like that, that side would be heavier and you would need to remove a little bit more material to make it balanced. Otherwise, it would shake and vibrate while you're mowing. It may not be bad enough for you to really feel it, but the engine would not like it over a long period of time. And when you put the blade on, if you're looking at the bottom, from bottom up, you want to see the side that's dirty facing the ground. And if you hold the blade like this, it's cutting. The side that you grind is going to be facing up. So put that up there, get that started. And we'll we'll just zip it on here with the gun. I checked online and everything I saw said the torque spec was 60 foot-pounds. I had the torque wrench already set to 60 foot-pounds, so we'll see how hard it is to get to that. Getting a little hard. Need the rag here to protect my hand. This gator style blade is a little sharp on the back side. So that's what you want, 60 foot-pounds till it clicks with this click type torque wrench. Now we loosen it back up. And we'll put it away. So this is just about finished. All I really need to do is warm it up, change the oil, and probably adjust the cable for the self-propel. I may do that in a separate video. I'm not going to take it out and run it today. So we'll see how we end up. Well, we're here working on this Toro again. I remembered it had a noise when you pushed it. The other side's quiet, so we're going to work on this one first and see if we can make that noise go away. And here's your drive gear that you want to make sure these teeth don't have excessive wear. That is a wear point. Well, of course, it's quiet now. This does have a sleeve in the center here. So I just have to figure out what is actually squeaking. Well, we got some grease buildup there. That's really dirty. The inside head of this bolt is really, really shiny. So I would say that's seeing some friction, probably causing the vibration, because that squeal is actually a vibration. So let's clean this off here. Of course, a shot of WD-40 would make this all go away. Would quiet it down, but I'm going to put some grease on it because I want the lubrication to stick around for a while. I do like WD-40, but it will wear away, and then we'll be back to this. So we're going to put a little bit of grease on there. And this is just good old-fashioned wheel bearing grease. It's actually been around here pretty long. Put a little bit on here. just a little bit on there. Now you want to keep in mind, grease will attract dirt. The dirt will stick to it. So you want to put on as little as possible. And just a little bit on the inside here. It's not going to take much. Just a little bit for lubrication, and you'll be good. Now this hole here has to go over that gear. No, I did not look up a torque spec for this. We're just going to make it tight. And just like that. This is that Toro personal pace that I've been working on that I needed to order some parts for. And I wanted to show where the model number is. It's down here. They have a piece of tape over this. But it's on the back. And the top number is your model number. The bottom number is your serial number. Sometimes you need the serial number also. Sometimes just the model number, depending on if there was any changes during the model run. But that's where it's at, underneath the flap for the bagger.